Joining me right now is the Hudson Institute Chinese Strategy Senior Fellow and Director, Mike Pillsbury. And Mike, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
I guess what I want to hear really from you and your analysis here is how much of this deal is going to deal with some of the real big elephants in the room and the bigger issues away from trade. And that, of course, is the intellectual property theft, the forced transfer of technology, and then espionage, which we know so much more about today, given what has taken place at Huawei.
Well, these are, as you say, these are the big issues. But unfortunately, the Chinese self-image, they're pretty strong. They're pretty tough. They do not agree with us that they're in trouble, that they're desperate. So they have not admitted any intellectual property theft at all. They have denied any forcible technology transfer has ever occurred. If it has, it's sort of low-level people who President Xi hasn't supported. So when the other partner won't admit any wrongdoing, you can see how tough the talks are from our point of view.
Well, I mean, that's a key point. And isn't it true that this is more like a culture? If they won't even admit that they're doing it, how do you expect this administration to really move the needle on them stop doing it?
Well, I agree with the president that he's got a wonderful team at work. However, more time is probably going to be needed so the Chinese can see just how serious the president is. They respect him. They're almost afraid of him. I've seen translations, Maria, of some of his books, not just The Art of the Deal, but his earlier book back in the year 2000 when he first talked about China ripping us off. Those books are well known in China. They think they're going to outsmart him through patience and through getting our Wall Street lobbyists, shall we say, to support a cosmetic deal. I hear a lot from the Chinese that they want a cosmetic deal, no enforcement, no verification, just aspirations and a lot of promises. And that's, frankly, that's the way it looks as of today.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard it right from companies' mouths. I mean, you know, we had on the former CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, who told me right out that it cost, like 90% of the companies in China use the Microsoft operating system, only 1% pay for it. And that's cost Microsoft $10 billion a year in profits. I mean, this is an extraordinary number. We've also heard from Motorola Solutions, we've heard from T-Mobile. So we know that the trade secrets theft has happened because we're speaking to the companies that are getting impacted. What do you need to see to really believe that the Chinese are taking this seriously?
Well, besides admission of past wrongdoing, the other thing that they're putting on the table now is they're saying they have a whole new system of internet courts where you can, foreign companies like Microsoft can file a suit, and they claim that 70% of these suits already are in favor of the foreign company. So they're saying they're going to expand the number of judges. They're going to make it easier to file suits in case of intellectual property theft. That's a small concession. It's nothing like the scale of what would be needed. I think what Bob Lighthizer has been telling people is that in the case of Japan, the talks went on for years. Even with Japan, a democracy, rule of law, they still were some kind of cheating on the side. So he thinks we're underestimating the task that we face. Also, the Chinese have an influence operation in America to lobby against a tough deal. We don't have that in China. We don't have an ambassador who has the cell phone numbers of all the Chinese leaders. China's ambassador in Washington is very active. He went to Steve Daines' ranch in Montana, you know, and opened up a beef deal that Steve Daines got credit for. Yeah. We have nothing like that in China. So the balance of influence is really very different. And it works in China's favor the longer these talks go on.
Yeah, I want to get back to the opening up of the markets in a second. But when I was in Davos this year, one of the ministers from China seemed very optimistic about opening up the market in China for financial services. You know, already UBS was given the contract that they can own 51% of a bank in China with the okay to do so 100% in 3 years. So they seemed very apt to open up financial services. But that doesn't do anything for the president's manufacturing base. You know, what about other industries? Do you think we'll see an opening up of the market there, 1.4 billion people away from financial services, or is it just financial services they're focused on?
No, it's not just financial services. Part of the President Trump's sort of genius at this is to focus on American companies making profit and having more access to Chinese customers and also manufacturing there. This has been a huge problem where informally at the local level, excuse me, Maria, and happy Valentine's Day too, at the local level, there's been enormous obstacles placed on our companies making profits. This is one of the key issues. Here, China can have some give. They've already leaked their demands that they want to have more American investment companies operate in China. They've even provided a list of which companies, which investment banks they want to let in first. But this is also a 10-year-old issue. It's called the Bilateral Investment Treaty, the BIT, by insiders.
Yeah.
And here they've got this long list, Maria, of what they call the negative list, the sectors of the Chinese economy that Americans cannot go into at all.
That's right.
There's some room for movement there.
Right. There are certain industries that are deemed 100% off limits. All right. So
Absolutely.
real quick, Mike, before you go.
Entertainment is an example.
That's exactly. And defense.
Yes.
So real quick before you go, just tell us what you think a deal will look like. Let's say they do get a deal done. What's the most likely deal that will come out of this in the next couple of weeks?
Well, the most likely deal is what I would call a cosmetic deal that appears to deal with all the issues, is comprehensive. Both sides can push it with their respective publics. But in fact, no enforcement, no penalties, no renewal every 6 months to look into it. That's the most likely deal. That's what Steve Mnuchin, I think, wants. He's been pretty clear about it. A tougher deal that would work, that would reduce friction over the long term and slow China's effort to get supremacy over us in technology, that kind of deal will be much harder, will take longer. So I'd be more for an extension of the talks to get that kind of a good deal.
Mike, we'll be watching. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thanks, Maria.
Mike Pillsbury joining us there.